Good afternoon, I'm Mariam Zaidi and welcome to a EURACTIV hybrid conference supported by the European Fruit Juice Association. Now today we're going to be wrapping our brains around empowering consumers to make healthy choices. A big welcome to our in-person audience and thank you to everyone who is joining online. And as always, if you have a question or a comment, do please put it into our Slido chat page and we will come to your questions a little bit later on in the programme. So as always, do get involved. So healthy choices, as I utter those words, do I perhaps sense a little bit of guilt around the room? Who's perhaps eaten a pain au chocolat, or maybe perhaps someone's still digesting their frites from last night? In any case, making healthy choices is never easy. One thing that, of course, does help us in deciding what we pick off the supermarket shelves and what we put into our bellies, labelling. Whether it is for food or beverages, they can really help you make informed choices, especially if you have specific dietary needs. Nutritional labelling for prepackaged food and drink has been mandatory in the EU since around 2016, but rules on what goes on the front of packaging hasn't been harmonised across the EU, but that could potentially change. Now, under the current EU rules, it's not mandatory to provide nutrition information on the front of packages, but companies can provide it voluntarily under certain conditions. So the kind of information that perhaps you can see on the front is the fat content, the energy content, salt and sugar. The best example I can think of, because I use it quite a bit, is pasta. You can also have summary indicators which give the item a graded nutrition score from A to E, or packaging that can carry an endorsement. Now, the EU Commission is, of course, working on a proposal for standardisation for front-of-pack nutritional labelling as part of the EU Farm to Fork Action Plan. It could help companies, of course, bring down their costs and simplify choices for consumers. And it could also incentivise companies to improve the nutritional quality of the products that they produce by perhaps reducing salt or reducing the sugar in the product itself. But it seems that lawmakers still, of course, can't quite decide what to do with front-of-pack labelling. So that decision has now been pushed back to around 2023, so next year. So what's the state of play, and what or could or not be considered healthy or not? Let's ask our experts. Okay, so time now to introduce our panel of experts. Joining is Rosa Dominic Amado, who's the Acting Director for One Health at DG Santé at the European Commission, who joins remotely. Welcome, and it was good to speak to you a few days ago. We also have MEP Christine Schneider, who's the Member of Agri Committee at the European Parliament. Welcome. She does also need to leave early, so do please everyone keep that in mind. We also will be having, joining us remotely, is Tomislav Sokol, MEP, who's a substitute for the ENVI Committee for the European Parliament, who is joining remotely. He's a little bit late. I think he's stuck in another meeting, so he will be joining us soon. And we have Emma Calvert, who's a Senior Food Policy Officer. We also have Dr. Carrie Ruxton, who's a Science Director at the Fruit Juices Science Centre. And we also have Milika Jevtik, I think I pronounced that correctly, thank you, the Regulatory Consultant at the European Fruit Juice Association. So thank you to you all. Always good to see so many women on a panel. It's always fantastic to see that. And it's always a good thing to say as well, because it doesn't happen all the time. Okay, so now to introduce themselves, first of all, we go to our panelists from the European Commission. Rosa, please do introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to this debate. I'm very happy to see a panel which is more than paritarian, so that's quite a bit of an exception these days. As you said, the Commission is in line with the Farm to Fork strategy, but also with the European Beating Cancer Plan, working on the revision of the regulation for food information to consumers. Our ambition is to empower consumers to make informed, healthy, and sustainable food choices. The ongoing revision does not only concern front-of-pack nutrition labeling, and obviously the setting of the nutrient profiles to restrict the claims, but also extending origin indication for certain products, the revision of the rules on date marking, and the ones that best before and used by, yeah? And also the labeling of alcoholic beverages. Like for all the legislative proposals, we're working on an impact assessment which is based on the scientific opinion, among other things, on the scientific opinion of EFSA, of the European Food Safety Authority, and also the Joint Research Center. But also we've done plenty of consultations to citizens, to stakeholders, some targeted surveys with member states, businesses, SMEs and consumer and health organizations, and the representative of BEUC knows that. As you know, some member states have introduced national recommendations and even legislation on all these, on several of these four strands I was referring to. And while it shows that the different approaches based on dietary habits, you were referring to diets, and clearly there are different dietary habits and consumer preferences in the different parts of Europe. But at the same time, it is true, and we've had some recent discussions in the margin of the Council as well. Well, the majority of member states would rather prefer to have harmonized rules at EU level than national measures. Therefore, it is important that a future proposal at EU level is balanced and has a real added value for citizens and also for our food businesses. So, as I said, the preparatory work is still underway. We're still ensuring to have all strong evidence on the basis of these four strands I was referring to. And I'm sure that today's debate will also be very informative and for me and for the Commission in this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will, of course, be discussing that preparation work that you spoke about the proposal. Next to MEP Schneider, please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for your invitation that we can discuss today about a very important topic in the Farm to Fork strategy. We discuss also in the European Parliament to make our food change more sustainable. And in the Farm to Fork strategy, we discuss a lot about labeling, because we want to give the information to the consumer to make a decision for more sustainable and healthy diet and lifestyle. And so we have to discuss what information are very important for the consumer. And the Commission, DG Sante underlines it. We discuss about a lot of labeling. On the one hand, about nutrition labeling. On the other hand, about the origin, about the welfare labeling, and also about the sustainable labeling, about the ecological footprint. And if you see all the labelings, we have to be very careful that we don't have a jungle of labels in the front package label. And so I made the proposal in the negotiation about the Farm to Fork strategy to think more about digital solutions to make a QR code, because then you have the possibility to put more information inside, because to make the food supply chain more sustainable, you need all stakeholders. On the one hand, the primary agriculture producer, all the producer, we have to look about the packaging, about transport, and also the consumer. And we don't want that the consumer only make his decision what food or what beverage he takes because of the price. And so you have to put a lot of information the consumer can have, and we have to be very careful that we have comparable information, that we have all the same labeling, because when you make in every 27 member states different labelings, it's very confusing. And so labeling is very important, and to have the same labeling on the European level to give the consumer the information. But I'm always honest, labeling will not solve all problems. On the other hand, one hand is the information we need, on the other hand, the education. And so for me, it was also very important, the negotiation, that we look to education in kindergarten, in school, that the consumer understands the information the label can give him.
Thank you. That was very well said. Over to Emma now.
Yeah, thank you very much. So first of all, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Emma Calvert. I work at BEIC, which is the European Consumer Organisation, and we represent 46 independent national consumer organisations across 32 European countries. And really when we, in the food team, we're a small team working in BEIC, but when we work on nutrition, we really sort of try to stick to the mantra of trying to make the healthier choice, the easier choice for consumers. And even though this is a very simple phrase, in reality, it's very difficult to implement that. And why is that? And the reason is because the food environments within which we make our purchasing choices tend to push us towards the unhealthier choice. So it goes from the unhealthy food marketing that our children see on TV or on their screen, to the billboards for fast food restaurants that we pass on the way to work. And then we have promotional offers in the retail environment, as well as confusing labelling. So sometimes we see health claims on foods which really don't necessarily deserve it. And then we also have, of course, price and availability. So there's really a number of issues which contribute to an unhealthy food environment. And as has been said already, there is no silver bullet to solve all the problems of the food system. We know that, but well-designed policy tools which can have an impact on population health, I think we have a responsibility to enact them where we can. And front-of-pack nutrition labelling, if it is well designed and it has a robust evidence base behind it, should also be one of these tools in the toolkit.
Thank you so much. Next to Dr. Carrie.
Hi there. So I'm Carrie Ruxton, I'm a dietitian, and I work for the Fruit Juice Science Centre, which funds research into fruit juice and also communicates the science to stakeholders and consumers. Consumers have a lot of dietary messages given to them at the moment, so it's no wonder that very few consumers are actually achieving this healthy diet that we want them to eat. And let's just start with where we need to be directing consumers. If you look at the Global Burden of Disease study, 1/5 of mortality is due to diet, and more than half of that just comes from 3 factors. One is fruit and vegetable intakes, one is whole grains, and the other one is high sodium diets. So really that's where we want to be targeting consumers to make those changes. Labelling obviously can help in this, but only if it gives a holistic view of foods and doesn't just focus on the negative nutrients. It really needs to talk about positive nutrients as well. And this is where I think that fruit juice can be part of the solution, because fruit juice is 100% fruit juice is simply made from squeezing the fruit. So the vitamins, minerals, the polyphenols, and the sugars all come directly from the fruits and nothing is added to it. And if you look at the scientific evidence on fruit juice through randomized controlled studies, we see that drinking fruit juice improves something called vascular function, which helps to reduce people's risk of heart disease. And that is not only coming from the polyphenols, which often can be more bioavailable from fruit juice than whole fruits, but also from the potassium. And potassium has already been identified as a nutrient of concern by EFSA. You've also got fibre, which was identified by EFSA, and you get that from smoothies. So I do see fruit juice and smoothies as part of the solution, but only if we can find a labelling model that gives a more holistic view of these foods and doesn't just categorise them based on 1 or 2 nutrients that we want to eat less of. So really it's all about giving consumers the options to choose more fruits and vegetables, to choose more whole grains, and to reduce their sodium, because that's where we're going to get the biggest effect on health.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, Milka.
Thank you. Pleased to be here and to participate in this debate on behalf of the European Fruit Juice Association, which represents, since 1962, European juice producers, but also actually the entire value chain. And the key thing I want to say is that we are really supportive of this ongoing legislative initiative from the European Commission to harmonize front-of-pack nutrition labeling, because we think that labels can really be a powerful tool. They can be a powerful tool towards consumers to influence their dietary choices. They can either direct or empower them. And that makes the, let's say, the responsibility of the legislator mainly, but then all of us as other stakeholders, even greater to really get these discussions right. This upcoming proposal for the revision of this regulation is really a key opportunity, mainly to better inform consumers of what they are consuming. And that preferably through a labeling system which is clear, which is complete, but which is also scientifically based. I think those are the really three prerequisites, let's say, in order to have a good system. And I would like to reiterate, the point that Carrie made, that it should not be a system that would focus only on those macronutrients that we are talking about all the time, but taking into account also micronutrients that exist in the food. And another point, why are we taking juice today as an example? That might be the question, why are we talking about the juice? Well, pointed out already by Carrie, but also by recent studies from WHO, from Eurostat, the consumption of fruit and vegetable in EU is declining. It's not sufficient, and it's yet declining. And I mean, we can only also imagine what will happen with the ongoing economic situation. The situation is not going to get better for the consumption. And therefore, we really need to put more effort into incentivizing Europeans to increase their intake of fruit and vegetable. And in that context, we see fruit juices and vegetable juices as playing a role, because as already stated, they're directly derived from fruits and vegetables. We have a European directive that forbids anything to be added to fruit juices: no sugar, no sweeteners, no flavoring, no colors, no preservatives. So it really is a type of product that can play into that role of helping consumers to increase their intake, but only if this is clear on the label. Right? Because, I mean, we cannot expect the European consumers to read the European legislation. What they are making reference to when they're making their dietary choices is the label. And that makes then the importance of this discussion even greater. And yes, we really hope that it will be an opportunity to then do this exercise properly and inform consumers properly. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's interesting what you say about people eating less vegetables. I wouldn't have guessed that one, but we will discuss it later. And then finally, I think our MEP Tomislav Sokol has now joined us. So welcome. Good to see you again. And please do introduce yourself and let us know what you think about healthy eating.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I apologize for not being able to come sooner, but we had some technical difficulties, but hopefully now everything is resolved. So I'm Tomislav Sokol, member of European Parliament from Croatia, member of several committees, but I think two are important. So the Committee on Public Health, on Environment and Public Health, the ENVI Committee, and the Committee on Internal Market and Consumer Protection. And in this second committee that I mentioned, the IMCO committee, I was the shadow rapporteur for the EPP, the biggest political group in the European Parliament, on farm to fork strategy. And here, this is the area, this is the document, this is the file on which I worked very, very hard, especially in relation to healthy eating. And so what we in the European Parliament want when we speak about eating, and what I think is crucial, is to provide the consumers with all the relevant information. We do not want to tell consumers what to eat, unlike some other political groups. So we want to leave consumers freedom of choice, but this choice has to be informed. So they need to know all the important elements of what they're eating, so that they can make up their own mind whether to eat it or not. And for that, of course, front of pack nutritional labeling is crucial. And what we in the European Parliament want is to have a mandatory and harmonized EU rules on front of pack nutritional labeling, so that consumers can choose the diet that they want, and we, of course, preferably a healthy diet. So currently, this is an area which is not regulated in the sense that member states, it is not harmonized. So member states can introduce their own rules on the front of pack nutritional labeling. Some of them have already done that. But what we want, since there are big differences across the member states, and there are big differences in terms of eating habits, in terms of health, in terms of obesity, for instance, etc., across the member states. So we want this to be harmonized on new level. So they have a mandatory system, compulsory system, prescribed by European Union of what kind of front of pack nutritional labeling should there be, so that all consumers in Europe have the same possibility to choose a healthy diet, so to choose what they want to eat. So this is our political position. I think this is crucial if we want to see some results in terms of having improving diet habits in the European Union, but also strengthening consumer choice.
Thank you so much, MEP Sokol. Okay, so as I was saying, we're going to change things up a little bit because MEP Schneider needs to leave early. So I'm going to just do a quick few questions with her, and then we'll go to the rest of the panel. So everyone, please do stand by then. Okay, so MEP Schneider then, we've heard lots and lots of different ideas. What is healthy, what potentially could or should go onto labels. Consumers obviously want choice nowadays. Supermarket shelves, obviously, or wherever you buy your food from, they do give you that. There's lots of choice on supermarket shelves. But is the current labelling that we see on food and drink, is it too confusing for people nowadays?
Yes, at the moment I think so, because we have different labelings. My colleague always said it. We have different labelings, and so it's not so easy to make the right decision. So I think we have to harmonize it. For me, it's very important. You said it too, that it's scientific-based, harmonized, but the one thing is the labeling, I said in the introduction. The other thing is the education. The consumer must be in the position to understand what the labeling will give for informations. Maybe we look at the Nutri-Score or at the nutrition labeling. We will look what the Commission will propose in the legislative report. The nutrition labeling has the positive aspects. Is easy to understand because you have the traffic light, you have green until red. But we have to look which groups we put together that we can compare it. And I think we also have to work at the algorithm, because for the example fruit juice, you have different kind of fruit juice and not always the same. There are very healthy fruit juice if they 100% fruit inside, but then they are very high in the natural sugar. And so at the moment they will have the green label. And on the other side, if you have a drink where the natural sugar is substitute with other things, maybe he has a green label. And so I think that information we have to compare for the consumer, because we want that the consumer eats and drinks more fruit and more vegetables. So we have to get the right information so that the consumer can really understand it.
Indeed. Now, you mentioned Nutri-Score. Could you maybe expand a little bit more about what that is, and should that be a kind of blueprint for front-of-pack labelling?
In the Farm to Fork strategy, and I negotiated for the Envy committee, I said it, we discuss a lot about different labelings, and very important is the nutrition labelling. And at the beginning, a lot of want to take the Nutri-Score as blueprint, and we said in the Parliament, stop. We need more information. And only to take the Nutri-Score will not be enough because of the problems we have. So we wait now for the proposal for the Commission, because we must put different products groups. I think that's my opinion, so that we can compare it. And so it's the example of fruit juice. It's very important to know, is it a fruit juice or is it a Diet Coke or what is it a drink, to get the information. And we have it also in other things. So the nutrition, the nutrition labeling is very important. It must be comparable. We need the same labeling in the whole member states. And for this, we need the same conditions. And so it can be a blueprint because it's easy to understand, but I think we have to change some things in the algorithm that the consumer really has the right choice and the right information we want to give him to have a healthy lifestyle and a healthy diet and a nutritional and sustainable diet.
Can you talk a little bit more about this algorithm? Lots of people are perhaps wondering, what is the algorithm?
For example, if you compare, I always bring this example in the discussion. If I took apple juice from my farmer, there are only 100% apple juice inside, nothing other. And you take a diet beverage where are no natural sugar inside, maybe you have a green label by this beverage. But at the moment, by the Nutri-Score, by the farmer apple juice, you maybe have a red label because he's very, very high in natural sugar. And we know if you only drink apple juice with a lot of natural sugar, 3 or 4 liters a day, it's not healthy. But it's very healthy to have a portion fruit and natural juice. And that I mean about the algorithm. We have to look very careful, not only 2 or 3 ingredients, not only sugar, fat. For a healthy, sustainable diet, you need more information. And you can put it in a labeling, but it's not only the nutrition, it's all your healthy lifestyle, who is important for healthy lifestyle, if we have a lot of movement. So we have to look, and the Commission have to look very, very careful to the algorithm, and then we have to discuss. So at the moment, I think not. We can take the Nutri-Score now we know to take it as a blueprint. It's easy to understand. I think when we make clear algorithm in the background, it would be the right way.
Do you mind if I mention one
Sure.
other example? If you get a chocolate milkshake with added sugar and you put in protein powder, and there is a product like this on the market, you can get a better Nutri-Score than a fruit juice or smoothie. So it can be manipulated, even though that chocolate milkshake contains more added sugar than the natural sugar in a fruit juice product. That can't be right.
And that can be not, in my same opinion, the way of the future, that we put natural ingredients outside and put industry ingredients inside, and then you give with the score the information it's more healthier. So I said it's very important to put the groups together, that it can be comparable, that we know really what is inside in the beverage and in the food.
And then just lastly, there was something really interesting that you mentioned in your opening statement. You talked about QR codes. I love a good QR code. How could that work, and what sort of information could that pack in then?
We discuss a lot of healthy nutrition, and we know the consumer today want more information. For example, a beverage also for animal welfare and meat, and some consumer want the information where the animals grow or where the juice came from. Came it from a farm? Where is the farm? How it grows? How the farmer works? And that's not easy to put all in 1 or 2 labels. So a QR code has the possibility to put a lot of information inside, and a lot of information who are not binding by legislation, but a lot of consumer want to know it. So you also can use it as farmer or a producer to give the information the consumer wants. And I think the QR code is the right way. And I think it's a big opportunity for the European Union to use this QR code to promote our products in the European Union, and to give this information. And you can correct info. You can if some information are new or other information, you can change it. If you only have a front pack label, you always have to print new labeling or new front pack. So I think the QR code is a good opportunity to underline that in the European Union we want sustainable, a healthy food supply chain, and we want to give the right information for the consumer. So if we put it together with education, I think it would be a big opportunity, and I hope the Commission will take this idea and put it in the practice.
Okay, thank you so much, MEP Snyder. And then let's just, ask our colleague, our panellists from the European Commission. We saw you nodding quite a bit. So you've heard a lot from all the panellists about what they think should be in labelling. Are you perhaps thinking about QR codes?
We are thinking about so many things, and actually the introduction of all the panelists just show how complex this issue is. I mean, I fully agree with MEP Schneider on the role of education to have healthy diets. Digital solutions. I agree on what she said. At the same time, it's true that a lot of you don't go to the supermarket to read with QR codes. In principle, you need to have an information available very quickly. So there is a bit of a debate there. But then, I mean, I've been listening very carefully to all the other interventions, and they just justify how difficult it is to get to a solution that is, as Carrie was saying, holistic, as Milike was saying, that it's clear, complete, and scientifically based at the same time, and all these needs to be in a tiny label. So it's really it's a bit of a nightmare in terms of proposal. That's why we're still in the process of getting the evidence, because we are considering all the solutions that are currently on the market, all the elements that they include. So yeah, I think that I cannot say what solution we will be proposing. Just that there are so many possibilities to consider in the proposal.
Indeed. I mean, I was actually going to ask you, Rosa, just separately, you know, what the delay for the proposal is. But as you said, just a nightmare of information that you have to try to condense and to put into very small little labels. But we will continue to talk about that. Emma, you wanted to also have a little thought, a comment on QR codes, isn't it?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that from a consumer perspective, we certainly see a role for digital tools like QR codes or website links, but really it's very crucial we define what kind of information we use these digital tools for. So crucial information that consumers kind of need in the supermarket environment, like ingredients, nutritional information, or a front of pack label, that really needs to be on the label. And nice sort of stories about the brand or recipes, like that can be put on a QR code that you can use when you're home, because realistically, we already don't have enough time in the supermarket as it is. There's so many things that need to happen for you to want to use a QR code. You have to, first of all, have a smartphone, have connectivity, know how to use your smartphone, know how to use QR codes. And that's not always the case, especially for older generations who want to have that information on the label. So we need to think about what information are we choosing to go offline and which one goes online.
It's funny that you mentioned connectivity, because whenever I'm in my local supermarket, I never have any connection. Exactly. But does it, I mean, if, for example, if a label was to be too, you know, digital focused, does that really then exclude, I mean, older generations or people who aren't tech savvy? Perhaps, Dr. Emma, you'd like to go ahead. Sorry, Dr. Carey, sorry, you'd like to comment on that?
I think it probably would. I mean, consumers, I think the research shows that they look at labels for about 2 seconds. So I do think that colour coding helps, but only if it is really helping direct them to the right foods. So for example, an older person, their health needs might be that they need to boost vitamins and minerals rather than be restricting dietary fat because they've already got to an old age, or they might be looking for protein. So if the label is a kind of a one-size-fits-all, always focusing on the more negative nutrients, it's not actually going to meet the need of that older person. So I think, yes, it's good to have an at a glance, but we just need to make sure that it's meeting the person's health needs and isn't this, everything is being forced into a one-size-fits-all, which doesn't really meet people's needs.
Okay. Oh, you know, yeah, sure.
Just to add to that, I mean, there is a recent report from JRC, from the European Commission, that indeed says that consumers do prefer colored labels, which is no surprise. I mean, it's faster, it's simpler, that's true, but we have to understand that this is really value judging the product. And that, again, makes the responsibility greater to put a scientifically based, a good system behind each of these colors. And to our opinion, what we have seen so far in those voluntary schemes, it was really on providing indications and driving without really giving the information as such, and the element that Mr. Schneider mentioned, without education. So through that label, just giving this or that color, you're not going to educate consumer about the actual nutritional composition of what he's consuming. So.
But where it could work is, as MEP Schneider said, when you're comparing within a category. So say you're going out to buy a lasagna and you have 5 choices. You can look at the colour coding on lasagna to say, well, which one is healthier for me and my family? But then it's very, very difficult to compare completely opposing products. And I actually don't think systems such as Nutri-Score were designed for that, because if you look back at the original descriptions of that system, they said it's there to differentiate within categories. So choosing your category might be the way to get past the nightmare that Rosa was mentioning.
But isn't also what goes onto the front of the label, that's also voluntary information. So is that information being manipulated? I mean, obviously you said that colour coding is the easiest way. I mean, it's the easiest way for all of us, unless of course you are colourblind, then it's a problem. But is that information being manipulated?
No, it can't be manipulated, because if you've got an algorithm or, for example, traffic light ranges of nutrients, then you can only fit into the ones that are designed. Where it could be manipulated is by adding extra ingredients to that product. So that's much more for the processed products. For example, the one that I mentioned, adding protein powder made a sugary chocolate milkshake look better than perhaps it would be on another scale.
Can you explain that in a little bit more detail? How does that actually?
Yeah, because you get points for protein. So if you've got a product that has added sugar to it, but if you add protein, you get the positive points for protein, which offsets the negative points from the added sugar. And also because it's a dairy product, it's actually treated like a food. So Nutri-Score and some other algorithms say if you're a dairy product, you're not treated like a drink where they're very hard on you. They're treated like a food where they're easier on you. And so that product then ends up with a better colour coding than something that's natural, which I just don't think that's right. I mean, as a dietitian...
Not right, and for anyone who's watching and listening, please don't try that, if you especially want to be a healthy person. MEP Sokol, you wanted to say something as well.
Yes, thank you very much. I also wanted to mention that we had a lot of discussions on Nutri-Score, not just in the IMCO committee when we were discussing farm to fork strategy, but also in the special committee on beating cancer that I was also a member of. So this committee made a report on the Europe's beating cancer plan, and there we discussed the prevention, and because more than 40% of cancer cases are preventable, and one of the main causes of cancer is unhealthy diet. And there we had a big discussion on the labeling and Nutri-Score, and the conclusion was definitely that Nutri-Score is not fit as this kind of a blueprint for the EU use. One example that we used was the fact that in Nutri-Score, Coca-Cola Zero scored better than olive oil. And of course, for us from the south and from the Mediterranean diet is very important. We believe that this is one of the good examples of healthy diet in the European Union. And of course, olive oil is central part of this Mediterranean diet, and this was the reason why using Nutri-Score as kind of a blueprint for harmonization across the EU was not acceptable. And the final report of the BECA committee, of the Special Committee on Beating Cancer, reflects that. So there are a lot of problems with the Nutri-Score. Of course, the using of the colors in itself is not the problem for me. Obviously, it is true that that if you want to get the attention of the consumers, that maybe is the best option. But what's underneath the content should be science-based. And that is crucial, and this is why we believe that any kind of future proposal by the Commission of a unified solution should reflect that. And also, so this is what I wanted to say. Also, what was going on in the Parliament, we had a big coalition of MEPs who were against using Nutri-Score as this kind of a blueprint. But also, I agree that that front of pack labeling will not solve everything, even though it is very important. But investing in education is crucial. It is necessary. We have a lot of funding at our disposal, also from EU for Health program, the new EU budgeting health program for Europe's beating cancer plan for prevention, which can also include education of consumers. And I hope that we will be able to invest a lot of EU resources into it, so that we can really provide the right information and educate consumers on what exactly which label means in what situations.
Okay, Rosa, let me ask you the question then. Does the Commission see that Nutri-Score is something that can be so easily manipulated?
Well, I think that the explanation was given by Carrie how you can, you know, I mean, all these evaluative schemes include, it was explained before, an algorithm, and it depends on the elements that in the end counting the algorithm that will provide a color or a value, but in the final solution, what we have been and we are still studying all the different systems and also all the elements, including what was said here in terms of the elements that need to be included in the front of pack nutrition labeling, but you will not be surprised, we haven't got to a solution yet.
Indeed. Could I possibly ask you to maybe talk a little bit more detail? I mean, obviously I understand you said there's such a wealth of information out there, there's so many options, but are you sort of halfway through your process at the Commission? Where would you say you roughly are in terms of getting this proposal sort of oven ready, as certain former Prime Ministers would say?
We are working on the impact assessment, which is for those that know how the processes go in the EU, the very first step before making a proposal. There has not been any proposal yet. We are still gathering information, gathering evidence, also from member states. It's been explained. The different trends. I'm not going to keep repeating that, and that requires a lot of time. We want to be able to make a proposal that is as balanced as possible, and for the moment we don't have it.
Question, Rosa. MEP Sokol was talking about the Parliament wanting mandatory labelling systems. Are you considering that? And also, a lot of the panelists have also talked about education. So is having an education campaign very central to what the Commission is trying to do in promoting healthy eating?
Is this a question to me or to?
Yes, it's for you. Yes, it's for you.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were. Well, definitely, education is. I mean, front of pack nutrition labeling, as someone said also at the beginning, it's not. It's a tool. It will not solve all the healthy diets. And as MEP Schneider was saying before, I mean, it's the whole healthy lifestyle that we lead that will determine whether we are more healthy or not. And there, obviously, education it's important. And yes, this is something that we are also considering to have or to support at least member states on their awareness raising campaigns and educational tools, definitely.
Okay. Emma, you will talk, expanding on the idea of healthy eating and education as to what is healthy eating. You brought up bad TV ads, which obviously influence children. I mean, how effective are they in influencing you to eat bad things?
Extremely effective, especially for children who tend not to have an awareness that there is an attempt to influence them to eat those kind of foods. And it makes it all the worse that kids are really bombarded from the moment they wake up, whether it's on TikTok or on Instagram now. Kids often use like the screens more than they watch TV, but even on TV, they're still very much exposed. Unfortunately, to date, we really have a reliance at the moment on self-regulation, which allows the industry to set the rules for what they deem to be acceptable to advertise to children, which isn't very often lining up with what the WHO or other health experts recommend for children.
Okay, but is there a way to rein in the industry then? What sort of levers are there?
Well, regulation.
Regulation, is it basically regulation?
So we would like to see a watershed which covers children, because we know that children tend to watch TV with their family for The Voice or X Factor. This is when children tend to watch TV the most, but that's not covered by self-regulation at the moment.
X Factor dead?
I don't know. That's just how old I am. But yeah, so they're on online as well. The UK were, until recently, they were planning to ban online HFSS food ads. So there's a number of ways we can tackle it. It just needs a bit of a political will at the moment.
Okay. Yep, sure, Milka, go ahead.
Up on that, yeah. Of course, the advertising is a whole new package, I think, that provides a lot of opportunities. We said labeling is one of the tools. But it can be an interesting tool if you consider what are current misconceptions that exist among consumers. And then we come back to the point of education, how educated are consumers and who's supposed to educate them. Specifically on juices, I wanted to point out that actually, according to the EFSA study, 1/3 of European consumers believe, mistakenly, that there are added sugars in fruit juice. So that's the point that I made at the beginning. They don't know the European legislation. They don't know what is in their fruit juice. And even worse, than 1/3 of the general practitioners who are, supposed to have greater knowledge than an average consumer, also mistakenly believe that there is added sugar in fruit juices. So again,
I've always thought that fruit juice has sugars. I mean, perhaps when we were younger, I think, or am I wrong to believe that when I was younger, that fruit juices had added sugar in them?
Yeah, that was the case. In the last 10 years, there is a regulation that specifically prohibits the addition of sugar to fruit juice. But in the end, we see that this old misconception is continuing to follow us, so to say, and we are really looking into tools then, labeling again being one of them, to actually give the full information to the consumer without obviously making this burdensome and taking too much time from the consumer.
You also said earlier that people are, I think it was you said it, that people are eating less fruit, and so fruit juices are the way forward. Isn't that, I mean, to me, I don't know about the rest of the audience as well, to me that seems a little bit bizarre, especially given these times where people are opting for healthier diets, like plant-based diets, etc. We're being told we shouldn't consume so much meat. Put down your steak. I'm sorry, people of Belgium, don't eat your steaks. At least, perhaps not every week. But isn't it a bit odd that people are still not eating vegetables? And then Dr. Carey, I'll ask you to comment later. Yeah.
Well, being it odd or not, it is the fact that we read through reports from WHO, from Eurostat. There was a recent, at the beginning of this year, a report from Eurostat showing again a decline in consumption of fruits and vegetables. I mean, we can talk about reason why this is happening, whether it's appealing or not, whether it's expensive. Don't forget that aspect, but that is the trend. And as I said, also the current economic situation is not there really to help change this trend. I think the COVID situation was a temporary, maybe a boom. But another point that I really want to stress when it comes to the role of fruit juices and vegetable juices, we are not advocating replacing the consumption of fruit and vegetable by juice. People should be eating fresh fruit and vegetable, but fruit juice can be one of the portions that can contribute to that greater consumption and greater intake of fruits and vegetables, and therefore the vitamins and minerals. That is the very important point that we want to make. Yeah.
Can I just ask you one follow-up question before I go to Dr. Carey? Is there one particular fruit juice that has the most nutrients or best benefits? I mean, especially when we are living in a kind of cost of living crisis and people are thinking, oh gosh, I'm not quite sure what I want to put into my shopping basket. Is there any one particular juice that perhaps has? I
think that's more for
Dr. Carey? Okay.
I mean, just all the 100% fruit juices are giving you what's in the fruit. And I completely agree with Melika. We're not saying don't bother to eat fruit and vegetables, just have juice, because that's not a balanced diet, but it could be one of them. And I think one of the reasons why people are not eating enough fruit and vegetables goes back to what Emma was saying about making the healthy choices easier. People are living very frenetic lives. They're eating more on the go. They're eating in their cars. They're eating in the trains. And sometimes it's just not convenient to have a piece of whole fruit or vegetable. But if you have one serving a day as a juice, it's portable and convenient, and it can be consumed. It's also very cost effective. So even if you buy the cheapest option, it's still got the same polyphenols that you're finding in the fruit itself. So it's for elderly people and people on a budget, it is an option. So it's part of the solution. It's not there to replace whole fruit and vegetables.
Okay, not there to replace. You mentioned cost.
Yeah.
So I did do a little bit of, calculator work, just to give you this guy's example. So I use the example of carrots, because obviously carrot juice is quite a nice juice. I don't know if anyone else drinks it. And this is a UK example, so I apologise. So a kilogram of a bag of carrots, 45p. 700 grams of organic carrot is £1.30. A 750 millilitre of organic carrot juice is £3. So shouldn't I just rather just eat the carrot?
Well, you could eat the carrot if you want, but you're going to have to chop them and cook them. And I want people to eat carrots, so that it has to be part of a package, a healthy diet. I mean, we could say brown rice is the super healthy food, but if you only ate brown rice, you would have a deficient diet. So it's about having different options for people. And there will be people out there who have plant-based diets and probably don't need to consume a serving of juice. But there are very many other people. The average in the European Union is 2 servings a day. I mean, surely we can do better than that. And having a serving of juice immediately makes it up to 3. And then we can encourage people to do other things in their diets. So it is part of a package that's being offered to consumers.
Okay, so don't just look at the negatives, think about the
No,
benefits of
think
the
about
diet.
the positives.
Exactly. Yeah. MEP Sokol, let's build on that then, about this idea of people having choice. But the fact is that right now we are living in a cost of living crisis. When you go to a supermarket all over Europe, the price of goods are getting more and more expensive. So how do you as an MEP talk to people about eating healthily?
No, that's definitely a big problem, and there are various reasons for this. Of course, the biggest reason is the external shock because of the war in Ukraine, but the inflation started even before that. And I have to say, I think some extremist interpretations of green policies have also contributed to a certain extent to the raising of prices. So we are constantly fighting that, also in the parliament. So because of course, environmental protection is important and fighting climate change is important, but we should also be very, very careful that by imposing too much conditions on our farmers, that we do not go too much and then make everything so expensive that it's just not worthwhile for the average consumer. So these are big problems. Of course, we are talking to the consumers. We are trying to alleviate the problems as much as we can. But unfortunately, when we speak about in general about fighting the inflation, most of the action has been done by the member states. So we were not able to get a common European measures on fighting the inflation. The member states are left on their own. There are also different reasons for that. So when we had the problem with COVID-19 2 years ago, then we came up with the Recovery and Resilience Facility, additional financing, etc., which helped member states to tackle the problems, unemployment, the problems with value chains, economic crisis, etc., which came with COVID. So then we had a common European solution, common European budget to resolve this problem. But now there is no political will on part of the member states to have a common European solution. So unfortunately, to a large extent, member states are left on their own. There are different measures which are being applied by different member states. What we will do in the end, we were able to get an agreement to try to limit the prices of energy, especially of gas, but we still don't know how this will work in practice. So at this point, the situation is not ideal, I would say. And but this actually shows us that if we want to resolve such problems like high inflation, like big external shocks like we had with COVID-19, we need a common European solution. And I hope that in the end, this capping of prices and this new mechanism that is coming up will help reduce prices of energy, and then also connected with that also the prices of other things like food. But currently we still don't, unfortunately, have a common European solution on that.
Indeed. Emma, talking about those prices in the supermarket then, I mean, I don't know about you, but the common products, products that I notice that I've been putting into my shopping basket for, well, a few years now, they're suddenly going up by 10p, 15p. Is that going to get worse?
Well, we don't know yet how much worse, if we've reached the peak yet, but what we can see is that, it's been mentioned before, like from our Spanish consumer organisation, OCU, we are finding that consumers are tending to buy fewer fresher goods like fruits and vegetables and fresh meat, and opting for more processed products. And that's where we think we should be enabling all the levers that we can to help consumers in the supermarket, if they wish and if they can, go for a healthier option, which is why we support a front-of-pack nutrition label to become mandatory as well.
Let me ask the doctor on the panel then. Given the sort of cost of living crisis that we are in, what would your advice be to someone who's saying, listen, look, I've got limited money, I do limited money in terms of what I'm getting from my job, I've got to take care of my family, what should they put in their sort of weekly shopping basket to try to maintain a kind of healthy, balanced diet?
Well, we do encourage plant-based diets, and that doesn't mean excluding meat or fish, but it means having most of your diet plant foods. And if you're buying them in season and produced in your country, you can then reduce the cost. Also things like batch cooking and adding beans and pulses, where you can replace some of the meat with beans and pulses. So there's many things you can do, and also accepting that frozen is actually a good option. You can reduce prices by buying frozen fruits and vegetables and using them in your cooking. You don't always have to buy fresh. So that can certainly help. And looking at other cuts of meat, we don't always have to have the fillet steak. Some of the less expensive cuts of meat can be put into slow cookers and used, and that can save money as well.
Melika, would you perhaps like to comment on healthy diets? Or?
Well, I don't think I have the competence that has to talk. I can talk from my own perspective as a consumer. But indeed, I think plant-based is not just a word and an expression which is à la mode, It is really something that we should all pay a little bit more attention to. there are some other reasons other than nutrition, and we're not going to go into environmental debate right now. But yeah, you very rightly said at the beginning of the debate that the choice is there. And I think we're lucky to live in an era where we have plenty of choice, but that might even make the situation or the choice more difficult.
The choices, I mean, I've got to say that I do, well, I'd call myself a flexitarian really, but I do try to do the sort of plant-based diet. But one ingredient I found in a lot of the, you know, a meat alternative, those burgers and everything, is soy. And soy is terrible for you.
And salt. I just said that salt was one of the top 3 for increasing the risk of disease. I think that there's a big interest in going plant-based, but we're going too much towards the processed foods. And these are more expensive and they have more packaging. Better to go back to the natural diet that, you know, the olive oil that MEP Sokol was mentioning, the fruits, the vegetables, the meats. And, you know, Europe has this long history of having juices as part of that. So, you know, let's eat the things that we all grew up with, because that's going to be less expensive and better for your health than some of the packaged foods.
And yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sorry, no, just to say that our members routinely run tests on these kinds of products, and it's important to remember that plant-based burgers or alternatives to cheese, whatever, they're not the only things that you can make as a vegetarian, of course. You can make some very nice vegetarian stews, vegetarian chilies. It's not just plant-based burgers or plant-based steaks, etc.
Okay, I'm going to go to some questions now because I think we are getting close to the end of time. There's a question from Julianne for Rosette, so I'll go online. Julianne says, what are the options considered by the Commission regarding the proposal? So this is the question I've actually asked you, but she's asking for a synthesis of systems already used in the EU, for example. Interpret that question as you wish.
Well, I think that I partly already replied that unfortunately we don't have a proposal yet. And I cannot even say that the proposal will be a mixture of systems. Obviously, we have taken everything, and we are still taking everything into account, seeing the pros and the cons of different systems, how to integrate different elements, all the elements that have been actually raised also in this debate. But I'm not in a position to say whether we will be mixing or not mixing systems.
Okay, there is another question for you, again on labelling. I apologise, Rosaire. It's from Anne, who says, could you give an indication of the Commission's timetable in terms of developing a harmonised environmental labelling scheme?
Well, the environmental labelling scheme goes far beyond this. I thought that we were talking about basically front of pack nutrition labeling. We are working in the context of the Sustainable Food Systems Framework, which has an element of labeling, but here again we are even in a previous stage of the reflection. So I'm sorry to disappoint Anne, but I'm not in a position at all to give any timing, neither for the sustainability framework nor for front of pack.
Okay, no worries, and completely understand your position. Mariella says, and perhaps I will come to our doctor again, I recommend a clarification about soy, as a presenter, which would be me, might have given a negative impression about soy. Did I?
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant soy sauce. I was thinking about soy sauce. So soy is beneficial. There's not a problem with that in the food, but when you're trying to turn soy into a sausage or bacon or chicken pieces, you have to add lots and lots of other things to it and process it quite heavily to give it the same mouthfeel and taste. So, you know, if you go and use soy in part of your diet and you cook it yourself, it's absolutely healthy. But when you make it into a packaged product, it can then have lots of other things added to it.
time was, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Sorry, not
wasn't
to
spreading
clarify.
misinformation, no, because that's one of the things I realised with the plant-based diet is you again have to look at the back of the packet, or well, look at the labelling to see what is actually is there or not. So I hope, Mariella, that does actually answer your question. We also have. Well, this is about harmonised labelling again, and we might skip that one. Francisco says we need to be careful about the information we provide to consumers. For example, according to Nutri-Score, olive oil is a category, while breakfast cereals are category B. Food should be assessed as a whole product and not on the basis of the presence of certain nutrients. MEP Sokol, you mentioned olive oil before, so that's the question for you. Do we need to be careful about the information we provide to consumers?
Yes, definitely. I fully agree. So the solution that Commission hopefully will come up with, but of course it's always like this. So they never tell you anything before the proposal comes out. We'll have to take this into account. So the Parliament made a strong statement in favor of Mediterranean diet as something which we believe is balanced and moderate. So moderate uptake of meat and fish. Also uptake of fruit and vegetables, and we think that's one of the blueprints that can be used. But of course, the system needs to take into account a lot of factors. But we definitely have to be careful in the solution that we provide, especially since it will be mandatory. So it won't be voluntary anymore, but it will be mandatory. So everybody will have to use this in the entire European Union. We have to get this right. And this is why it's important that Commission comes up with the right proposal. And of course, that's not the end. When the Commission comes up with the proposal, then the Parliament and the Council have to agree. And one of the reasons why we were not able to have a common European mandatory system up until now is, as with most other things on European level, is the opposition of some member states. It's always like that, because the Commission proposes, the Parliament then agrees, but we have to get the final agreement with the majority of member states in the Council, and that's always the biggest problem. So I'm pretty skeptical that we will be able to finish all of this in this parliamentary term in the first half of 2025. But of course, we remain hopeful.
Let me just a quick follow-up then. Isn't it a bit of a shame on Europe when politicians, when experts are saying you've got to be healthy, but the EU cannot come up with its labelling, its front-of-pack labelling?
It's not a shame on Europe. It's the member states. So we cannot make any decisions without the member states. So we cannot impose. We are often attacked that we are some kind of unelected bureaucrats in Brussels who just give orders to the member states. But in fact, it's completely the opposite. In fact, we are usually blocked by the member states because we cannot get the majority in the council. But this is what the member states and the people want. So people want that member states also have a say in making decisions on the European level, and this is the system that we have. But as I said, in most cases, it is the member states who are opposing common European solutions. We see it in many areas, with the energy crisis, for instance, with a lot of other different things. But this is what member states and people who like national governments want, at least the majority of them.
Okay, member state blame game. Emma, would you like to go first? That's okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to come back to the point about the categorization of certain foods. And I think it's important to remember that when we compare products, you're not comparing olive oil with Diet Coke, because you're not pouring Diet Coke on your salad. You're not guzzling, hopefully, olive oil to quench your thirst.
That would be rather disgusting. Yeah. Don't do it, everyone. Don't do it.
But it's also important to know that the 7 European countries who are either using Nutri-Score or who have endorsed it to hopefully be used soon, they have been working on looking at the algorithm to see if there are any areas that can be improved with the algorithm, because we've always said that we support the Nutri-Score, but we always think that it should be subject to review to bring it into line with any updated public health evidence. And the olive oil now gets a B with this updated algorithm. So it doesn't score badly, but it never did score badly amongst the fats and oils category. It was always the best fat and oil. Mm. So if you wanted to choose a healthier fat or oil, you would always have gone for the olive oil because it was the best scoring.
Brilliant. I use olive oil all the time. Fantastic. Milika, you wanted to speak?
No, just wanted to point out, I mean, in defense to the whole European system, with this proposal, I think we are setting ourselves, we are very ambitious. I mean, the legislators are very ambitious. It's not an easy task. And yes, it's probably going to take longer than we think originally, but it is an ambitious task. I mean, everything we've been talking about since the beginning of this discussion is challenges, challenges, challenges. And now even, I mean, we mentioned what are with the traditional diets, like a Mediterranean diet. You just now mentioned another aspect that needs to be taken into account, and that is the quantities of products that are actually consumed. So what can you compare? And also the frequency of consumption. I mean, ideally, these aspects also need to be taken into account when you're deciding on what kind of labeling you're going to put and eventually judge this is a good or a bad product. You know, that those are also the elements that need to be taken into account. For fruit juices, I can only say that, I mean, according to Eurostat, there is only 11% of European consumers that consume juice on a daily basis, you know. And then when you take EFSA reports, you see that basically this translates into 67 milliliters per day that we are consuming. So, I mean, you know, you can talk about overconsumption.
Why are people so adverse to fruit juices then? Let's ask that question. What's the problem?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is why I'm confused as well, because if I take an orange and I eat it and I am chewing it, so the juices are going into my mouth, this is good. If I squeeze it into a glass first and then I drink it, is bad. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, I think it's also important to realise that dietary recommendations, they do, when they are recommending fruit juices as part of the diet, they do recommend a minimal amount, 150 millilitres usually, or to prefer water. Water is best, prefer water, go for water instead, because they can actually have a significant contribution to sugar intakes. I know in the UK, after soft drinks, fruit juices and smoothies, they contribute the total sugar intake. They're the second highest contributor to sugar intake. So we do have to be a bit cautious.
That's true, actually. I think
it was in
biscuits, cake and confectionery.
Public Health England for adolescents from 11 to 18.
I calculated it from the last EFSA report that sugars from everything else in the diet was 41 grams a day, and sugars from fruit juices was 6. And this was EFSA's own report. And the UK, I think it's 6% of the free sugars from fruit juices and 94% from the cakes, biscuits, confectionery, which I think are probably the less healthier option.
Question on sugar. Isn't sugar like the biggest drug in the world?
No, it's not a drug at all. You know, it's not a drug.
It's the most addictive thing.
The thing is, if
in everything, isn't there a way to limit it?
No, it's not addictive at all. And when you look at going back to the Global Burden of Disease study, which is an international study, sugar contributed to less than 1% of mortality risk. And those products that I mentioned, the whole grains, fruit, vegetables, and low sodium diets, were more than half of the variation. So if you're going to make an impact on health, which is what we all want, why would you focus on sugar, which is going to give you less than 1% of an effect, versus the whole grains, fruit, vegetables, and sodium, which is going to give you about 54%? So you've got to target your effort where you're going to get the biggest impact on health. And when you look at randomized controlled trials where they've given people up to 750 mils of fruit juice a day, which I would not recommend, I go for the 150 that you've mentioned, they're getting no negative effects. In fact, they're getting positive effects on vascular function, and which reduces blood pressure. So you've got to look at the evidence. The evidence says if you're having daily fruit juice, it's having a benefit, not a risk. So we shouldn't conflate it with sugar-sweetened beverages where you are getting the risk to health.
Okay. Well, listen, we've only got a few minutes left, so I'll ask all of you now for your closing statements. Rosie, I'll start with you first.
Chocolate, which is my favorite food. I would have liked to have some sort of no, that's obviously a joke. No, I'll take Milika's last sentence to conclude. We are trying to be extremely ambitious, and here we are only talking about challenges. I hope we will be able to provide and to propose something reasonable in the next few months. That's the only thing I can say today. I'm still optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next to MEP Sokol.
Thank you very much. Dietary habits are a big problem in Europe. So almost 60% of adults in the EU are estimated to be overweight or obese. And this is something which directly contributes to cases of non-communicable diseases like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and cancer. So this is a major public health issue as well that we need to tackle. European Parliament is committed to resolve this problem, to contribute to resolve this problem by establishing a mandatory front-of-pack labeling system on the European level, which would be the same in all member states, which would provide the consumers with all the right information about what they are eating and let them make up their own mind, so without forcing them to do anything. About the blame game, I have to comment on that. It's not a question of blame game. The truth is that we are dependent on the Commission proposal, so the Parliament cannot propose legislation by itself, so we depend on the Commission. And after that, of course, also we have to get the agreement with the Council, which means with the Member States. The Parliament has, on a few occasions, said what its priorities are. We said that we want front-of-pack nutritional labeling. We want it to provide the right information and not to mislead the consumers. And I'm confident that we will be able to succeed. The Parliament will not be the problem. The Parliament will do its utmost to get this done after we have the concrete proposal.
Thank you so much, MP Sokol. Next to Emma.
Yeah. So just to talk about front-of-pack nutrition labelling again, but I think it's really important when we're moving towards this proposal, hopefully very soon, that we remember to keep those who are going to be using this tool, which is the consumer in the supermarket, we keep them in mind when we're designing it. And there's some criteria that we believe any front-of-pack nutrition label needs to adhere to. It needs to be developed free from commercial interest. It needs to be based on a robust and independent evidence or body of evidence. It needs to be interpretive, which means colour codes for us, because that has been proven time and time again, including in real-life supermarket trials, to be the best way of helping consumers derive that information at a glance. And it needs to be based on per 100 grams instead of per portions, which are assigned by the manufacturers themselves. And we always say that the Nutri-Score is not perfect. No front-of-pack nutrition label can ever be perfect, but it is the best scheme at the moment. So we really hope that we see something like it in the proposal.
Okay, Dr. Kerry, next.
Well, I think we need to guide consumers towards those foods and nutrients that are going to have the biggest impact on their health. And those, as we know, are fruit, vegetables, whole grains and lower sodium options. And we need a labelling system that's going to help that. And I do think that having fruit juices and smoothies is part of the solution, because these contain the potassium and with smoothies, the fibre that EFSA says that we need to get more of in the diet.
Thank you. And then lastly, Milika.
Yes, thank you. Challenges, we talked about it. But again, to finish on a positive note, I think it's a really huge opportunity for mainly the legislator, but then all of us as a stakeholder to really come up with something that will help consumers, that will help all of us in our daily choices. And in our opinion, in order to do that, indeed, labeling is a tool, provided that it's of course scientifically based and that it's not solely focusing on the negative nutrients. Let's look at the product as a whole. Let's look at, as Carrie said, fruit and vegetable consumption, how to boost it, and what role can fruit juices play in that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much. So thank you to all of the panellists, to our two panellists who join us online, and to all of our audience members. I hope that what you've heard today has helped you, or perhaps empowered you to make those healthy choices. I'm Mariam Zaidi. Thank you so much. Goodbye.